So, we talked about that stress of the holidays, and it's real. I've talked to so many people who, have basically used procrastination to kind of deal with some of the holiday stress and overwhelm, myself included. My little ones have sort of, nudged me along this season to kind of get things done. And so, I'm doing it for them. And it's just all these things you're juggling at once. And so, everybody's going through that, and there have been so many things happening, in the workplace, in, our economy, in, the communities around us. So we're talking to Shantala Boss this morning, licensed mental health counselor with Boss Wellness LLC. She is a familiar face on News 6. You've probably seen her if you watched News 6 at 9 before. She's been on many times to talk about a variety of topics when it comes to counseling and mental health and dealing with life. So good morning, Shantala. Welcome to Breakfast with Bridget.
Good morning, Bridget. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad that you could do this. I know you had emailed us and let us know that you could talk about some of the some of the ways we can cope with the holidays, because it's not all glitter and bows and baby Jesus love all the time, because everybody is dealing with a lot of stress around this time of year. And why is that? Because that shouldn't be what our holidays are about. Whether you're celebrating Hanukkah or Eid or whatever, we all deal with a lot on our plates this time of year.
Well, there are a lot of expectations this time of year, and everybody has a different interpretation of how they want to spend the holiday or how they feel like the holiday should be spent. A lot of families have different traditions, and some of the problems that can come into play is we have these ingrained rules within our family systems, and then we grow up and we move away and we have families of our own. And our original family of origin may have some of the same family systems that maybe don't work with us anymore, or maybe don't work with our dynamic or our belief system, or how we view the world. So how do we deal with that? How do we go back into those old ingrained roles and fulfill those family obligations, but also stay true to ourselves? And that's what I've been talking a lot about with my clients this season, and I do
Hmm.
that every season. It's a very busy time of year.
So you
So there
see
are a
an
lot of different
uptick.
things we can do. Oh yes, it's starting probably end of October. We get really busy, and there's a lot of stress. And it's not it's the norm to feel stressed during
Hmm.
this time. And I think a lot of times people look at what the holiday they want it to be, what it
Yeah.
should be, and they compare and they get downtrodden. So it's a lot of reframing too, and realizing this is hard for everyone. Yeah.
So, what is the spectrum of things that you see, whether it's male, female, young, older age range? What are the types of things that come up?
A lot of times I see this with adult middle-aged females, a lot of times more than males, but males as well, where they feel a lot of obligation to fall into those roles to make their parents happy, to then also to make their own family happy. And there can be a lot of stress. And what I always say is it's very important that you feel safe, seen, and heard during the holidays. So whatever you need to do to set those boundaries with your family. And it doesn't have to be an upsetting confrontation. It can be something beforehand where you set a new tradition
Hmm.
or new ideas for what you're going to talk about or do. You can honor the past, but you can also move forward and be progressive and limit those conversations that can bring stress or trigger responses that are not necessary during this time. You don't have to talk about everything. So, but
Hmm.
it takes some planning, and it also takes patience, because, if this is your first year kind of doing that and maybe setting some time limits with family or going to a different destination or having a
Hmm.
different conversation, it's not always going to go as smoothly the first time. Practice and patience, of course, and reframing what your holidays can become instead of having the past guide you all of the time. I think that's
Right.
really important that we look at
There's
that.
there's a lot of cultural pressure. I think at least maybe in our country, there's a lot of cultural pressure and societal norms or boxes that you have to check depending on what those respective holidays are, or what your background or culture is. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, anywhere you go around the world, that definitely is the case. And so within your family of origin, you're going to feel that even more so. So if we have a cultural norm and then we marry into or have a partner who's in a different
Mm-hmm.
situation, a lot of times I see a lot of stress between families. Who are you going to spend Christmas Eve with? Some families, that's very important to be there Christmas Eve, whereas others, you must be there Christmas morning. And
Mm-hmm.
families are trying to fit into all these boxes and make
Yeah.
everyone happy, and it's very, very stressful.
And sometimes there's hundreds of
So
miles between
looking at
those two
that.
places.
Absolutely. Sometimes when the homes are actually closer, it's even harder because then you're rushing back and forth and trying to meet certain time limits. So all of these things are going to happen and are going to come into play. And so, really, a lot of it is self awareness,
Mm-hmm.
realizing what your stressors are, what you can do versus what is going to stress you. Possibly you could do it, but is it really going to be better for the family as a whole if you're completely stressed out and unhappy? And then your responses are going to be quicker. You're going to have a harder time talking, relating, and accepting the situation. So you have to look internally a lot
Mm-hmm.
at yourself and what feelings are coming up, because that's a lot what it's about.
We look at some of the comedies, the Christmas movies we've grown up with, whether it's the Griswolds or Home Alone, or some of these movies that highlight that family stress and the chaos. And I feel like even Christmas Story. I feel like we love those movies because we identify with it even in our own life story, right? But what are some healthier ways to prevent the chaos? How do we have those difficult conversations? How do we manage the long to-do list respectfully with, people who may be, super high into the holiday and maybe like, you want it more low key, or, how do we have those conversations and those compromises peacefully?
Well, I think finding out first what everyone's expectation is. Oftentimes, I think we just think we know, or we just guess what we think everyone else wants. And people change, people adapt, people grow. So, talking with your family, asking them what their expectations are, what they need this holiday, and then letting them know what your expectations and needs are, and coming to compromise, but
Mm-hmm.
always being true to yourself. A lot of times, we think that we need to meet these unrealistic expectations that we see everywhere, but nobody's really upholding any of that. Even as I speak right now, I'm wearing pajama pants. I'm
Yeah.
home. So we look nice. We do the best we can, but everybody has stuff. Like we have regular everyday life that comes into play, and it is okay. It is okay to be less than perfect. And so talking about the family with that and expressing those things, I think that's really important. And then you can do things like set time limits. We're only going to have, we'll be there for a couple hours after dinner and then we're going to go
Mm-hmm.
home. You can set new activities, a family
Mm-hmm.
trivia about something fun and light, instead of, if someone in the family is always getting into topics about politics or
Right.
religion,
Mm-hmm.
you can redirect and start new traditions and fun things. Nothing has to be set in stone. So I think it's really
Yeah.
important we talk, we compromise, and we work together.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be the rubber stamp exact same way year after year after year, and that's what
Hmm.
makes it fun too. We talked a little bit about some of those other stressors, like changes in the family, whether it might be job loss or loss of a loved one. So you're dealing with either like emotional grief or mourning or bereavement, then you're dealing with maybe job losses or financial stressors, and this time of year puts more pressure on everyone's wallets.
For sure. And I think sometimes we belittle those feelings because we think, well, it's not, even if it's not a job loss, say, inflation, things are
Mm-hmm.
expensive. It's a tough time of year. And we think, well, I still have a job. I should be doing all these things that I've always done, or I should be feeling the way I've always felt. So I like to tell people we need to limit shoulds. This is a different year. This is a different time, and we can feel what we feel and learn how to adapt. We don't need any shoulds. The reason for the holiday is to be close to our family and to learn how to appreciate them and who they are, and for them to appreciate us. So if we can do that and we can reframe that, it's very important. Sometimes we don't catch on to
Mm-hmm.
some of the stress that we're feeling because we think, well, I shouldn't feel that because nobody's died. I haven't lost my job.
Mm-hmm.
I have all these things. But there are still major stressors that maybe we didn't have last year that are going to cause us to react differently. And it's okay
Mm-hmm.
to look at that and look at that and reframe it and allow ourselves to feel things. So important. And then how do we cope with that? What coping strategies do we need to make it through the holidays successfully? And that takes some self-reflecting,
Mm-hmm.
and that takes some internal talk and dialogue too as we go through this season.
And so often we do tend to fall into unhealthy coping mechanisms, whether that may be overspending or using credit because maybe things are tighter, and then but you still try to make everything happen. How can you negate that? How can you you know try to like get around maybe someone who's dealing with unhealthy coping such as abuse of substances to mask grief and things like that, and it gets worse during holidays and family gatherings.
Well, with spending, it's tough, but I really think that most people just want a thoughtful gift, even
Mm-hmm.
if it's something you make a card, you buy something that they mention they like. It could be something very inexpensive.
Mm-hmm.
So really just thinking more about the person and what they appreciate. It doesn't have to be super expensive. I know that maybe if that was our norm in the past, it can be difficult to adapt, but there is something really special about sincerely thoughtful gifts or homemade gifts, getting the kids involved to create things for family members. So special. As far as substance abuse goes, that's a whole nother,
Oh yeah.
section of
Yeah.
the spectrum, and learning how to deal with and develop coping strategies is definitely, I think, noticing that this time of year is a trigger for that, and that we probably will be obviously more exposed to alcohol, more people around us will be drinking, there's more stress. So making sure we get exercise, we have positive interactions with others, and we keep the course, whatever that is. If we're involved in AA, or we're involved in a group, or we have a sponsor,
Mm-hmm.
really not losing connection with those people during this time of year, because we all get busy,
Yeah.
but making sure that we prioritize that, because it's very hard this time of year to stay the course
Right.
when
And
it comes to
also
addiction.
respecting others' sobriety journeys in that, if you're entertaining them as well.
It's huge.
Mm-hmm.
It's huge, yes, for
Well,
sure.
this has been
Yeah.
lovely catching up with you about this topic, which is so important. And I hope that people will reach out. How can they find you, Shantala, before we go?
My website is bosswellnessllc.com, so that's the best way to reach out to me.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I hope to see you again soon. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year. I'll see you in
You
2024.
as well.
All
Sounds
right.
good. Bye.
Bye. Take care. Well, I hope that that was soul food for you. I hope you have a wonderful Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. And I will see you back here possibly next week or in 2024. Either way, be well, be safe, and enjoy your time with loved ones. We'll see you back here on Breakfast with Bridget very soon. Take care.